to the show. It has been an amazing day. It's been a really good week, actually. This week we've been covering the book of Revelation, just kind of a top overview, not really going through the detail, but it's been a pretty good week. It's been a pretty good day. Let's see, what have we learned this week? We started with the seven churches. Um, Seems like that is kind of an action item because, there's five of the churches have things they need to do before Christ returns. And what's interesting is what we're going to get into tonight reiterates that. I just realized that when I was reading Revelation to prep for the show today. It reiterates what it is that people need to do before Christ returns. I think it's in Revelation 20. It's either 20 or 22. We'll get to it later tonight. We also covered the seven seals, where we are in the timeline, the two witnesses, some new possibilities for the two witnesses, the two beasts. I haven't published that video yet. I'm still working on producing that. That should be. I got the seals. Was it the seals or the witnesses? I got this witnesses video produced and released this morning. You can find it under replay. So if you guys don't know what those tags are, I've been trying to, because we do a live video and then I re-release it as a produced video, I've been trying to put tags in front of them. So on the one that we do live, which what we're doing right now, it'll have the word live in the front of it. And when I run it through the processor to clean everything up and make it pretty for so that it can kind of be like the primary reference video. That one I put replay in the front of it. I've been trying to think of a term that communicates because I know that personally when I go to a YouTube channel and I watch a video and then I think they release a new video and only to find out it's the exact same video I already watched either under a different name. I want to avoid that situation. I don't know if anybody's been running into that, but personally, it annoys me. So I've been trying to help with the annoyance. So that's why I'm putting those tags in front of the titles of the video. So if you see replay, just know that that is a reproduced version of a video that we've already done. And so that's what that means. I should probably do maybe I'll explain that on the about page just so there's a reference point. But yeah, so I did the release for the two witnesses, and I still have yesterday's video to polish up and re-release. So that one will be on the two beasts, which that was a really good video. I enjoyed that conversation with you, and looking forward to today's conversation because today we're going basically the rest of the book of Revelation 14, 15 through 22, which is talking about the 144,000, the wrath, Babylon, New Jerusalem, basically the rest of the stuff that we can look forward to. But anyway, if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe to the show. Before we get into this, Paul, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm retired, live up in northern Minnesota. I was a moderator for probably a year with Two Witnesses Live, and many of you know me from there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Usually, if you don't know who Paul is, you may have seen him in the chat. He was often in there keeping you kids in line. But now he's on the show, so having conversations with me. And you might be wondering where Christopher is. Christopher he's working on building another channel. It's called Christopher M. Brock. It is he's working towards building his ministry, so he's over there. You can catch him in 2 hours. He does his show at 6 o'clock. So 6 o'clock Pacific time and 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll probably have him back on the show here once things kind of settle down. We don't know when that will be, but he'll come back over here and visit to say hi. But with that, let's talk about Revelation. Where should we pick this up? So we left off with the two beasts. So now we're getting into what happens after the two beasts.
Well, we had talked, I think, a little bit about the 144,000.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any further thoughts. I was very pleasantly surprised when I found out that a lot of our Black brothers and sisters are likely Israelites.
Yeah.
Just have a very disturbed history.
Yeah. And if you haven't had a chance to catch the show yesterday, People with very dark complexions likely have the same genetics as the children of Israel. So the Israelites had very dark skin, and it's very likely that Jesus had a very dark skin as well. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. But
Yeah.
Paul, what were you saying? You want to give a little quick summary on the history that led up to that?
That uh, oh, yeah, that led up to that discovery. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was watching a video. I think it's something like "You're Not Black," and anyway,
right.
they it was a big series of videos, and they traced from the time that Christ was crucified.
Mm,
There was a uh, like a curse placed on people that had taken part in the crucifixion of Jesus, and it was, as to them and their children down through the generations.
hmm
And the from there, many of the Israelites migrated into northern Africa and across the Sahara Desert, and they kind of settled right in there. Well, if you kept going, that's where the slave trade took place.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they got their slaves. They captured them further inland where the Israelites had settled.
Wow.
So, and as the peoples got jostled around and moved around, they lost their heritage.
Yeah.
And this guy had traced that on through.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean,
It is.
I was raised with an understanding that Yeshua had darker skin, but had never really made the connection that it could very well be, um, more. It could describe that entire race, or the I don't know how to say this. How do you say this in a nice way? Our black brothers and sisters
Yeah.
are very likely. Yeah, race. The funny thing is race has never been an issue for me. It really boggles my mind how it's become an issue in this day and age. Like, it was such a complete non-issue for me growing up as a child. um I One of my favorite mentors was a black man. That's just how I was raised. Some of my favorite people on the planet, some of my best friends are from different cultures. And I don't I've even I heard about racism as a child, but it just never really clicked how somebody could have an issue with somebody just because their skin's different, or they fit a particular pattern from another culture.
I think that's more of a political narrative
Yeah,
than a reality, because I'm the same way. I care about the behavior of people,
sure.
the content of
Yeah,
their character, but I really race means very little to me.
yeah, agreed. Well, so anyway, to your point that the 144,000. Well, I mean, it stands to reason that there's probably coming from. I wonder if the tribes cover different like races. You ever think of that?
That's possible.
12,000 from each
That's
tribe.
that's possible. I do think they may be scattered all over the world.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. What else is covered in Revelation 14? So you've got the 144,000, which in 14 it looks like they're already with the lamb. Here, let me
Yeah.
share the screen here, which kind of begs the question on, is this, when does this happen? When are they with the lamb? So this is one of the things I think that gives rise to the pre-tribulation rapture, is the assumption that somebody's going to be raised up and be with the lamb for when he returns. But, given where we've come, the last 7 years, uh, I, I've made this comment before on the channel that 144,000 is actually a relatively small number of people. It's highly likely we wouldn't even notice that amount of people missing. Like, if they were raptured, we would probably not notice, because more people than that die every day around the world.
Right. Yeah, I'm guessing it's, if you think of just the number of cities in the world, there's probably more than that many cities.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
144,000 in out of 9 billion, because that's I believe they don't really know how many people are on the planet. The estimate is about 9 billion, which is a very large number. 144,000 out of that is very small.
yeah,
Let's see. So if yeah, I mean, I've wondered if the 144,000 isn't some of the more vocal people who are, on the internet proclaiming the end times, because when you read about the 144,000, that's basically what they do. They followed the lamb wherever he goes. So I've always looked at it as somebody who's followed Yeshua their entire life, um, which is kind of lent towards the virgins. Is, if you think of virgins as, religions or other beliefs or doctrines or gods, that's kind of what I've thought about them. So how about you? What is your impression of who the 144,000 are?
I'm not sure. I do think that they are people that are very much on fire for God.
Hmm.
Um, but boy, I have a feeling, quite honestly, that we are very scattered, and none of them probably know each other. They're
Yeah.
not in a group in a singular place.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's probably a divine plan. I I'm not sure that they've led perfect lives, because I think that's uh, imperfect lives is how we learn. We make
Right.
mistakes and we learn from them.
Yeah.
If we all knew the answer to start with, what's the point of life?
Yeah. I want to read this here in 14:3. They sang as it were a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. See, that makes me think that they were raptured. So whether that has happened yet or whether it's going to happen, I don't know. But continuing in 4, these are the ones who were not defiled with women. See, I think of women as, I can be completely wrong, but this is just based on other definitions in the scripture, like the woman who sits on the scarlet beast, for instance.
Right.
I think she's likened to a city, and we were just talking earlier how that city is very likely Rome. And when you think of Rome, you think of Roman Catholic Church. So, like when I think of not defiled with women, I think of not defiled with other religions. Like they were never Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, anything like that.
Oh,
For they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. See, that tells me that they're Christians. From when you think of Christians who follow Jesus, make Jesus their Lord.
yes.
That's what I think about the 144,000. Is literally these were people who were raised up in order to lead.
Right. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
the
it's
on the defiled, not defiled by women,
mm-hmm,
that one to me is very confusing, because if you think of it uh, in a uh, in a sexual sense,
mm-hmm.
then uh, to me the Bible would almost contradict itself, in that forgiven means forgiven,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh nope, you were forgiven, but we also remember, and we're also gonna take you out of this group because that's your punishment.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just starts getting kind of weird. I like your interpretation better, uh, but I don't know. It's not quite clear.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're taken out of here when the with the two witnesses. That could be a possibility.
Yeah.
Or they could have already been taken out. Maybe they've been redeemed
we,
throughout the course of the last 1,000 years. It doesn't really
we,
say, so it just kind of leaves it open to speculation.
it does. And when you think about how many people just in the town you live in move, and you never hear from them again,
Hmm.
and you may not know that they're gone for a couple of years, and or
Yeah.
somebody tells you, oh, they left. How do you know that they weren't raptured?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at how many people have passed away just in the last 7 years, just in the last 4 years. I mean,
Right.
even still to this day, it is not surprising for me to hear somebody talk about, losing three, four, five people in their lives, even
Wow.
today.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking of somebody very specifically who it wasn't last month; it was the month before that. He had lost 8 people close to him within a 2 month period of time. So like,
Right.
those kind of things are on the rise right now, and it's just like we're so used to the state of the world right now that it's very easy for us to forget people. So it's entirely possible that somebody could be raptured and you just whatever happened to that person? Oh, they passed away, or oh, they
Yep.
got raptured. But
Yep.
here
They move.
in verse 5 here is to your point about being trained up and making mistakes.
Yeah.
This really kind of hit me when I was reading this. In verse 14:5, it says, "And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God." And it's interesting because this must speak to their character, because pretty much everybody is a liar. I mean, I think the scripture even says all men are liars somewhere.
Yeah.
So this must speak to their, like, who they are as their character. In other words, is they don't speak with the intention to deceive. Like, when they speak from what they know to be true.
Right.
Um, and then we get into what's the next thing? S- Did you have something?
No, I was reading the Living Translation, and there they say flasks, but I think a lot of Bibles say bowls. Am I correct?
Mm. Oh yeah, bowls. When you're talking about
Yep.
the bowl judgments and the trumpet judgments.
Yeah, there were. Let's see. That's in. I think it starts in 14.
Yeah, yeah, we're still in 14:6, and it starts talking about the proclamations of the angels and reaping the earth's harvests, which is
Yes.
interesting because clearly this hasn't happened yet, but it looks like it could be coming in the future. I believe this is probably the rapture.
I was thinking of that parable of the wheats and tares
Hmm.
in reading that,
Yeah,
and it, boy, does it to me. It kind of resonates with the idea that the rapture could occur right around in then, and then here comes the fire to burn up the tares.
yeah. Well, yeah. But here's when I was reading that. Let's see. I think it was in 9. Says then a third. Where does it talk about the wrath? The grapes being the reaping the earth's harvest down in 14. So 14:14. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. So there's your reference to the harvest. And
Right,
another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of earth is ripe." So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on earth, and the earth was reaped. And then we get into the grapes of wrath. So it's interesting. So that sounds like that would be the rapture, because I think even in Matthew 24 it talks. Well, even in the parable of the wheat and the tares.
that that really kind of was where I was at with reading it. You know,
Yeah.
because yeah, here's the harvest. You grab your sickle.
Hmm.
When you think of wheats and tares, they're other than their plants that grow during the summertime. When it comes to harvest, that's when you start caring about the wheats and tares, and you start doing things based on
Yep.
what they are.
And what's interesting is this next section, because we were wondering, what happens to the people who are left on Earth who take the mark of the beasts. And
Yeah,
these next sections actually start to get into that. I think it might be here, it might be a little bit further down. So then another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another came out of the altar who had the power over fire, and he cried with a loud voice to him who had a sharp sickle, saying, "Thrust in." So this is a second time of a harvest. Thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. See, this makes me wonder if it's right here, the second beast rises up, and when like we see all the potential like stuff coming on the earth, like the earth flipping, the sun increasing its heat, water being undrinkable, things like that. It kind of makes me wonder if it's not, in it like in about 3.5 years. So you'd have about 3.5 years for the first beast from the sea to continue persecuting the saints. Then you have that rapture, that reaping that we just read about, which is, whoops, tried resharing the same tab. This one, reaping the earth's harvest. So would this be the first harvest by the Son of Man, one like the Son of Man? Then you have the wrath, and then there would be another harvest. Oh, these ones are thrown into the wrath. So the angel thrust his sickle into, so I'm reading it in 19 right there. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city. See, that reminds me of Revelation 11, where it talks about John was given a reed to measure the city, but he was told to leave out the courtyard to be trampled under the feet of the Gentiles, I believe it was. So
Oh,
this
yeah, I think it
reminds
was. Yeah.
yeah, this reminds me of that. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs.
That
So
that
I'm
could be
yeah,
that they relate to each other. And
yeah. Hmm. See, so I was telling you this earlier. For the last 7 years, actually, just since I've been studying the Book of Revelation, it's been the first part that has been the most interesting to me,
yeah,
because it's like that was the first piece of the puzzle, and trying to nail that was really felt like my highest priority. That's why I focused so much time on the seals and the timeline, really,
right.
until I started reading this again. Um, and I don't know how to explain this, but anytime that I would venture into this section of the Book of Revelation, it was as if it was just like, that's not important right now. Focus on the
Hmm.
first part. Get the first part figured out before you move into the second part, because you won't understand the second part until you get the first part right. And today was probably the first time that I looked at this and was going, oh, hey, I wonder if those signs, if I can go find those signs. So, right here in 15, it says, then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, seven angels having the seven last plagues, for in them the wrath of God is complete. I hadn't noticed that before. Like when in all my years of working and studying the scripture, I probably read this 100 times, but
Right.
it's so weird that my attention and my focus has always been on the first half, the first 14 chapters.
I don't know if we've got the first half completely perfectly correct,
Oh,
but
agreed.
it's sure heavily trodden ground, and I think we've got a lot of it figured out that
Yeah,
5, 10 years ago probably wasn't even possible.
agreed. Yeah, I mean, like without that anchor point and without starting to line those things up, it was
Yeah.
impossible to know what things meant. But now that
Right.
we've actually lived through some of that, and we can look at those and go, okay, so that's probably what that meant. Now we can continue. Because see, like this, now I want to go look up and find that sign. Then I saw another sign in heaven. So if you think to the Revelation 12:1 and 2 sign, those were signs in heaven,
Yeah.
at least the anchor point, Revelation 12. And I believe I have at least a candidate for another wonder appeared in heaven, the dragon whose tail drew a third of the stars of heaven. That seems to be Cetus, when three of the seven were in his tail.
Right.
So now I want to go look this one up. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, seven angels having the seven last plagues. For in them the wrath of God is complete. Now I know most people when they think of seven and the stars, they think of the Pleiades. Here's I've showed you this picture before. I wish maybe I'll post it on the on our community board later. Uh, when I have a perfect view of the Pleiades where I live, and very very rarely is it ever seven stars. I know a lot of people associate anytime they think of like stars in the Bible, they associate with the Pleiades because they're known as the seven sisters. That is based on mythology. That is, I don't know if that's actually based on the fact or any kind of fact that there's only seven stars. Because the truth is there's way more than seven stars in the Pleiades. And like even just visible to the naked eye, I can see 13 or 14. You remember that picture?
Yeah,
Because it's like one night I took a
yes,
picture of it and
I
go,
do.
see, this
I
is
do.
this this is
That,
why I have an issue with people associating seven with the Pleiades.
yeah, I think the photo you had, it looked like just from the photo on my cell phone, I think I could see like 30 stars.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
It was,
ton of them there. It's
yeah,
definitely a cluster.
right.
Um, but it's called the Seven Sisters, and because it's called the Seven Sisters, a lot of people associate the Pleiades with anything associated with seven. But my issue with that is, in order for it to be a sign, the sun, moon, and the planets have to be in conjunction with it because those are really what make up signs. Is as they move through different
Yes.
places in the sky, that's what determines whether something is a sign. So we would need to look for something. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous. So we need to look up those words, what they are in the original. Great
Yeah.
and marvelous, seven angels having the seven last plagues. Hmm.
Just in case one of our viewers is questioning why are we looking at the sun and the stars and so forth, I believe, isn't it Genesis 14 and 15 that
Correct.
says the sun, moon, and stars are four signs, day and night,
Mm-hmm.
seasons, and signs.
Yep.
And so we're told right right at the outset that that is what they're for, and that's what
Yeah.
we're looking at here is signs.
Yeah, I mean that's their purpose. They're literally meant to be a clock for us.
Right.
We use them to determine the hours of a day, the days of the week, the months in a year, and even years. And they're also used to mark significant times. So God, it just it boggles my mind how God built this machine that perfectly lays out the timeline of events. Like it's unfathomable.
You
um,
know,
Having put this together to where it's just like the literal orbits of these massive celestial bodies reveal time, like
that
mark days.
it sure kind of makes the Big Bang Theory look a little silly, doesn't it? Whenever
It,
whenever I got a
yeah,
big boom at my house, there's crud everywhere.
yeah,
There's no organization to it. Uh,
yeah,
and here we are. We got stars lining up within constellations of planets, right in line with the behavior of humanity and the tipping of the Earth's poles, and
mm,
all of that's lined up. My messes aren't, you know, my messes aren't like that. That
right.
organized.
No, it's extremely organized and it's extremely
Very.
precise. I mean, go just for fun. Just go to Chat GPT and have it tell you all the events that happened on days of eclipses. It will blow your mind. Like the
Ah,
fact that eclipses mark out, big events that happen on the earth, whether, it's people who do big things or big events
right.
that affect the entire planet. There is a significant number of things that have happened on those days. It's really
I'm gonna
glorious
do that.
to behold. Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. I was playing with Chat GPT earlier today and have something right out of what we're covering tonight that's exciting to share.
Yeah. So this is where it gets into the mark of the beasts. And I saw something. So I'm in 15:2 right there. And I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who have the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, having harps of God. They sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the land, saying, great and marvelous are your works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, O King of the saints. Who shall not fear you, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you alone are holy. For all nations shall come and worship before you, for your judgments have been manifested. And then this is really good, just this whole section. And after these things I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened. So the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open. Man, that's a mouthful. But you have another temple here, and which is interesting. This is something I don't have the answer to, but the temple is referred to here several times. It's actually referred to quite a lot in the book of Revelation, and I don't know if it's the same temple where it says you are the temple. That would be an interesting study. I might actually do a study of that and do a presentation on it just for the clarity of it, because it doesn't make sense if we are the temple of God, that
Right.
and these things and after these things I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened. I think it's qualified in heaven here,
Hmm.
so it's definitely different.
Yeah, and I think, just like in the English language, one word can have multiple definitions, and you
Mm-hmm.
know by the context which definition
Yeah,
is intended.
I think Gregory was saying something like this, that there is a temple in heaven. He was I know he's done a study on this before.
Right,
Yeah, because it's qualified there, in heaven was opened. And it further emphasizes that as we read. And out of the temple came the seven angels having the seven plagues, clothed in pure bright linen, and having their chests girded with golden bands. Then one of the four living creatures gave to the seven angels seven golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. So we're still talking about the wrath. The temple was
right,
filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple till the seven plagues of the seven angels was completed. Yeah, so that's definitely not us, the temple. That's
right.
definitely a different temple. Hmm.
Now,
Yeah, that would be an. Go
when
ahead.
we get here to the plagues, what is your understanding from the context? Are these played out over a long period of time or a short period of time, or what's your thought?
There's a rent, there's sand in the machinery of what I think on this one, because I thought this was something that took place in the future that hasn't happened yet. But there's a reference in here to the Euphrates being dried up, and it's already dried up. So
Completely?
that's the sand. That might be the qualifying question, is if it's completely dried up or not. There might be a little bit left in it.
Yeah, the
That's a good
last I
question.
saw, which it was less than a year ago,
Hmm.
it was very severely dried up, but there was still a river there,
Hmm.
and it was
Yeah,
going down.
yeah. That's my understanding. Is it's been drying up, and yeah. To be honest, I haven't followed up on it to see if it's completely dried up. I seem to recall a video, watching a video, that it had been dried up, but it's hard to know because people repeat one another, and if just one person says the Euphrates dried up, it's the end times, you have no idea who they're
Right.
referring to.
Yeah, they just start
But
talking.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I
and I
haven't gone
think
there and checked myself.
here where we're reading, I was getting the impression that it meant completely dry. They could march their armies right across it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe it's not to that point yet. I haven't. I that's interesting to follow up on. Does anybody in the chat know? Do you guys know? See if anyone has anything in the chat to say about it. Oh, here. I'll go down to the bottom where you guys are.
It-
Speak up if you guys know. If anyone knows if the Euphrates is completely dry or not, we'll just continue in the meantime.
I got the impression from these plagues that they were played out over a relatively short period of time. Could be, a month or maybe less.
Well, yeah, because they seem to be replicating some of the plagues from Egypt, from Moses when he was
Right.
bringing out the children of Israel.
Well, and I think it would get really hard to survive It very miserable, but hard to survive with these things going on.
Yeah. What's interesting about these is they affect the people with the mark of the beast. So the first went out and poured out his bowl on the earth, and a foul and loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image.
Right.
So I know there's a lot of speculation on, is this technology? Is this genetic manipulation? Is this simply just a mark, or is this the type of people?
Yeah. Is it a tattoo?
Yeah, is it a tattoo? I mean, like, is it literally because oftentimes in the Old Testament, when somebody is marked, it's what they believe. It's what they believe and
Oh,
how and what they bless, who they are. In matter of fact, in the children of Israel, when they were being freed from the bondage to the Egyptians, Passover, the you marked the doorposts. So it was a physical mark. It was literally a change of color because you put the lamb's blood on the doorposts of the house, and whoever was in that house was spared.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it could be as simple as a tattoo.
Right. Yeah. And I think, the
Hmm.
I think it's intentional, but I think if you don't have your eyes wide open, you may miss it.
Yeah,
Like like the jab, people that took that, it was intentional,
yeah,
but could have been the mark.
it could have. Well, it was definitely a weapon,
Yeah.
and it could have had a genetic effect because later on here, so you've got the seed turning to blood, you have the waters turning into blood, you have men scorched with fire, which that's I see that and think of coronal mass ejections, like those have been increasing. I could see that increasing to the point to where it's not safe to go outside anymore. So to me, that sounds
Yeah.
like the atmosphere, the shields of the earth are being eroded away, which is scientifically exactly what's happening. If you ever listen to
Yeah.
Ben Davidson on Suspicious Observers, that's exactly what's happening. The shields of the earth are being worn away, and we're going to get to a point to where it's not even safe to go outside anymore because the radiation will get you.
That was the impression I was getting. The blood in the waters,
Hmm.
that uh I'm not really sure how that would take place.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, is it a chemical, a dust? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, because so these things could point to this stuff. I wonder, being it's associated with the wrath of God. I wonder if it's not associated with the rotation of the Earth when the North and South Pole flips, because I imagine when that happens, there's going to be all kinds of volcanic activity, and it's entirely possible that it could spoil the waters.
There you go.
Like, could you imagine all the waters moving over the land and just getting? If you've ever seen a flood, recently with the North Carolina floods, that it
Right.
was unsafe to go into the water. So anytime there's a massive flooding event where the waters get agitated and mixed with a lot of stuff on the land, it's unsafe to drink. So to
Right.
me, I almost wonder if this isn't. Uh, uh, yes, Lonnie. Okay, so Lonnie just got back to us that the Euphrates is mostly dried up, but there's still just a little bit of water in it. Okay.
Right. So it's getting close, but it's not there yet.
Interesting. Isn't see this? It's almost like an hourglass. It's like the sand is just like coming out of it.
Right. It is.
So the
Yeah.
fact that there's water left in it tells us that we're not quite there. But like even that in and of itself is a sign of where we are in the timeline. I mean, like
Right.
if it was completely full of water, which could very well be, if even if it was completely full of water, you would be like, okay, so there will come a time where the angel pours out his vial and dries up the Euphrates. Um, but the fact that it's already drying up now and there's a little bit of water left in it, that kind of tells you like it doesn't take a whole lot for the angel to finish drying that up. That's got to be a sign of where we are in the end times, right? I mean, like that has got to be indicative that we are like really in the ballpark.
Yeah, well, it's hard to call it a sign of the end times if it's dried up 50 years before it's dried up, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's a sign in the end times because it dries up in the end times.
Man, that is just so cool. That is really
It
cool.
is.
All right, what else do we have here? So let's speaking of dried up. Okay, so in verse 12 here, what are we in? We're in 16:12. Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beasts, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits and demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them together to battle of the great day of God Almighty. Behold, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments. See, there it is again, where we're told to watch. Like you're
Yeah.
blessed to watch. I feel blessed. I mean, like just literally watching these things and talking about these things, I've never felt more fulfilled in my life than I do right now.
I am, you know, as the world's being ripped apart, I'm just cool as a cucumber.
Right?
You
Yeah.
know, you just read it, it's like it's like having the movie plot in advance of watching the movie.
Yep.
You know, there's no big surprises, nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Uh, you know who wins in the end, and you know if you're lined up with him or not.
So see with what it's talking about here, where it talks about the frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet. It
Yeah,
seems to me like that is people agitating the world. Like they're going to stir some stuff up to bring people to battle. I mean, because you think about it, they got to encourage people to want to fight for something. So
right.
God is gonna, so something's gonna happen that's gonna stir people up, which we've started seeing that. I mean, it's entirely possible that's happening and can continue to happen. With the way the election went, it looks like we might have a period of peace. So I kind of think this might still be in the future, especially given that the Euphrates isn't completely dry. So it feels like this is still in the future. I could be
I
wrong
think it
about that.
is. Yeah, that's the impression I got too.
Yeah. And then this
Uh,
earth is utterly shaken. That really leans towards the pole shift. Then the seventh
but
angel poured out his bowl in the air, and a loud voice came from out of the temple of heaven. Again, there it is. That temple is qualified as being in heaven. From the throne, saying, "It is done." And there were noises and thunderings and lightnings, which you can imagine would happen with the earth rotating. And there was a great earthquake, such a mighty and great earthquake as had not occurred since men were on the earth. Ooh, I never saw that before. What's interesting is Ben says that these cycles have a 12,000 year cycle. So if this is something that is going to happen, it hasn't happened since men were on the earth. Hmm.
that's
Kind of makes you
interesting.
kind of makes you wonder who was on the earth before. Maybe
You
that's where
know,
the angels came from and they weren't men.
when I look at this, to me, it really does seem like it has a lot to do with the pole shifting. I mean, you've got sores, you've
Mm-hmm.
got uh, waters turning to blood. Now, I don't know how the sun would do that or the pole shifting, but it can cause turbulent weather and flooding and that kind of thing. And maybe iron from the soil kind of washes and mixes in with the blood or
Mm-hmm.
mixes in with the water. And that would be a description of it. You got the
Oh yeah.
sun scorching, and so forth. It really seems to be tied to the poles,
Yeah.
the pole
I think
shift.
you're I think you're right. I think that the bowls might very well be The pole shift. Well, and we're seeing it. We're literally seeing it. We're seeing the increase in coronal mass ejections from the sun, which has been
Right.
increasing the earthquakes. The earthquakes are up 6, 7,000%. We've seen volcanoes erupting for months on end, putting massive amounts of ash in the air. We've seen weather more extreme than it's been in recent years. I mean, just look at the last two hurricanes that hit.
Well,
They were very
the,
extreme. What was they called it a century
yeah,
hurricane that came into North Carolina. That only happens like once a century.
right. Well, and
Um,
the pole shifting can change weather patterns, and
right?
changed weather patterns could cause a river to dry up.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
just
The bulls
all
seem
those
to
things.
actually be pointing, yeah, to all this earth flipping stuff.
Right.
Wow, that is so cool. Which also would consequently line up with taking. It seems like it lines up with taking the mark of the beast because there's definitely some language in there about it
Yeah.
affecting people who have taken the mark of the beast.
Right. But I'm wondering if it may be that the pole shift causes that to everybody, except that believers are protected
Or removed. I mean, because
or
if that
removed.
harvest, yeah, if they're harvested from the earth before the wrath, that
Right.
would put us at about 3 years. That would put us in about 3 years because the earliest I think Ben said that it could happen, and it was only like he was given a very low percentage. It was like 2 to 5% chance of
Yeah.
happening in like 2028. But the thing is
Right.
the pole shift is increasing. So like it may be 5% today, it might be 30% in a year. It may be 40, 50%. You see what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
as these things accelerate, it could be here very quickly. Wow. So then we get into the woman and the scarlet beast.
Yeah.
So, and this is what you were looking at today with the seven hills.
Right. Yeah. I started doing a search on AI on the
Mm-hmm.
seven hills and kind of what are their names, trying to get pinpoint them down. And AI kicked back that the seven hills often relate to or refer to Rome.
Hmm.
And so I was trying to figure out uh, who would be connected. So we got the land, but where's the people element of it? And I
Yeah.
was thinking, well, because it talks. Uh, let's see, we should find that. It talks about the kings of the earth doing business with her and becoming rich and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I and I'm kings of the earth. Well, this has got to be some kind of a global entity. So I
Yeah.
started looking at World Economic Forum, and
Yeah.
that was coming up empty.
Hmm.
Uh, so you and I were talking about the UN earlier this week. So I looked, well, what's the connection between Rome and the UN? And the UN has three agencies located within Rome, Italy. And Rome, Italy is the capital and
Wow.
headquarters of Old Rome, okay, the old
Interesting.
Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And see if I can find that. Um, yeah, this is chapter 18. Let's pick it up. Let's pick it up at verse 4 and we'll go through 8. Then I heard another voice calling from heaven, "Come away from her, my people. Do not take part in her sins, or you'll be punished with her. For her sins are piled as high as the heaven, and God is ready to judge her for her crimes. Do to her as she has done to you, and more. Give double penalty for all her evil deeds." It wouldn't be good to be her. Uh, she,
Well, what's interesting is that makes me think of the mark of the beast. Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins. All the people who suffer
oh,
through the wrath are those who have the mark. See, that's what leads me. That's one of the things that leads me to thinking that this is like who you are, what you
yeah,
believe, and what you do. because look at
Right.
what she's done. She's you know fornicated with the
Yeah.
world for for too long.
Yeah. Let's see. Do to her as she has done to you, and more. Give double penalty for all her evil deeds. She
Hmm.
brewed many a cup of woe for others. Give twice as much to her. She has lived in luxury. Okay, here's where we go with wealth. And wealth in on this planet is not well dispersed in this day and age.
Right.
She has lived in luxury and pleasure. Match it now with tormentous and with torments, with and sorrows. She boasts, I am queen upon my throne. I am no helpless widow. I will not experience sorrow. That's what she says. Therefore, therefore, the sorrows of death and mourning and famine shall overtake her in a single day. She shall be utterly consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord who judges her. And I want to reread this one part here. Therefore, the sorrows of death and mourning, okay, that's kind of one piece, and famine shall overtake her in a single day. The famine, interestingly, the UN has three agencies in Rome. All of them have to do with food.
Wow.
All three of them. You'd think that normally there'd be, two or three different things. If there's going to be three agencies, they're all food.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was wondering, well, okay, if it's maybe Rome, Italy is the city, but what else is located in Rome? Catholic Church, the Vatican.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and between the Vatican and the UN, doesn't matter which
Yikes.
one, but boy, they've got a huge influence over the world and have really controlled a lot of the world's wealth,
Yeah.
directly and indirectly.
And see, I could see the UN being the beast from the sea because it's made up of all the people and nations around the
Right.
world. And then I could see Rome being the second beast from the land
Yeah.
with two horns because you've got, and that's where King Charles could come in, to
Right.
where he could be related to, because basically Rome became the Roman Catholic Church, and
Yeah.
he's been highly involved with the Roman Catholic Church.
My understanding, and this is I haven't, don't trust the source on this one, not without research, but
Hmm.
I had heard uh, that the crown, English crown, has been behind selecting each of the popes all the way along.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it would not surprise me. So what does that
Um,
mean for the years ahead? So expect to see more trouble from the United Nations as they try to exert their authority, and then there will
right.
come a place where the church takes over, and then I could see the mark of the beast being associated with the church. People
Well,
don't
and
realize this. The Roman Catholic Church is responsible for a lot of the manipulations in scripture. Like there are people, if you get offended because we say that the King James version is not the pure word of God, you haven't researched it, you haven't looked into it. The Roman Catholic Church is responsible for us not having the perfect pure scripture in our hands today. They have massive amounts of um, information in their archives that we don't have access to, that would probably answer a lot of questions for us. That definitely makes them merchants of the earth who have just been trickle feeding stuff to us.
weren't they the ones that removed a lot of the apocrypha from the Bible?
Oh, oh yeah, 100%. Well, they're also responsible for the canon of the Bible that we have today. That's actually put together by the Roman Catholic Church.
Right.
So, they were responsible for the first 88, for us having a book with the first 88 and then taking out 22 of them so that we only have 66 books. So, if you have just a regular King James that only has 66 books of the Bible, that's been changed from what it was originally. But the thing is those scrolls and that information has been available worldwide. They're just the ones who have started to like control. And now you can start to see how the woman has, manipulated the world because they've basically put it into a format to control people.
Right. Hey, Watchful, when you were a kid, did you ever play that game Operator? You got a circle of kids, and you start with you whisper from one person to the next all the way
Oh
around.
yeah.
And
Telephone.
yeah, telephone, and you've got a message, and you see what it comes out the other end, and it's
Yeah.
always way different. And that's I learned the lesson when I played that as a kid, that each iteration it changes a little bit.
Yeah.
And this is not, my Bible's not written in Hebrew, and if it was, I couldn't read it.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. It's like if you want to get as close to the original of what it was, look at what it was originally written in. The people who received the inspiration of God, the people who were there and actually saw the events, they were not English speaking. They were
Right.
Hebrew. They were Greek.
Now I do believe that the creation testifies about the Creator.
100%.
The Bible does, and I think it's written on our hearts too. So we've got multiple sources to look at and see what makes sense. So
Yeah.
even though we've got some errors introduced into the Bible, uh, I
You,
think we can
you
get
rec-
to the right answer still.
yeah, you recognize truth. And that's why you
Yeah.
don't have to qualify it. That's why you don't have to say, God told me this or an angel told me this, because people recognize truth. Like the
Right.
truth stands on its own. The truth will withstand scrutiny, you know? Like
Yeah.
if you believe something to be true and you can't prove it, you should figure out how to prove it. Because
Exactly.
you might not believe you might believe something that's not true. And that's interesting because that's an attribute of narcissists, and it's also an attribute of antichrist, the spirit of antichrist. One of the attributes of the spirit of antichrist is they are liars and deceivers. And here's the thing: people can lie without knowing it, because a lot of times what I see happen is people will be taught something and they refuse to go verify it, and they'll just become a mouthpiece for that doctrine. You see it on the internet constantly. That's how
Yeah.
that woke mind virus spreads so viciously, is because people don't verify stuff and they repeat it, and that makes you a liar and a deceiver because you will teach it as though it's truth.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
do that.
And you don't qualify it and put people on notice that, hey, I may have this wrong. And
Yeah,
it's not always available by context either.
yeah, yeah. If you're speaking something that is true, there's nothing that will invalidate it.
Right.
So, wow.
But we're starting to get
Oh,
close to time. Was there, and I see
yeah.
that we,
So that's Babylon, probably Rome. Let's get into something. Let's end on a positive note here. So Satan's bound for 1,000 years.
yeah, well, the
Great
good
white
news
throne.
is what follows the millennial period. We got the Battle of Armageddon,
Mm-hmm.
and all the bad guys get knocked out, and the good
Yep.
guys get to be on earth with Jesus for 1,000 years.
Yep. And here I wanted to read this in 21. So it says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Also there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them." I think this might be talking about us as the temple. And they shall, let's see, he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Reason so not only did I want to leave on that because it's a positive note, but what's interesting here is in 21 where it says, "For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away." If you recall Matthew 24:42, and it talks about no man knows the day or hour, not even the angels, only the Father in heaven, that is in context of the heaven and earth passing away. So you have a reference here to the day and hour that Jesus was referring to. This is the time that no man knows.
Yeah.
And if this is after 1,000 year reign, so all these things that are happening now in the book of Revelation, there's still even after Armageddon, there's still 1,000 years before this happens. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, got our work cut out for us. Yeah. So what are we
Boy,
doing
that's going to
next
be a
week?
whole lot more exciting than the recent election when all that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the 1,000-year reign because we'll have a king who knows what he's doing, knows what he's
Right.
talking about. Like, there's going to be no doubt on, like, is this guy lying to me? Is he deceiving me? No, he's proven that he's true and honest, right? He's proven that he
Yep.
knows how to obey God's will. And the things that he does and the things he gives us to do are going to be right. Man, can you
Yep.
imagine like having full confidence that, you're on the right path, that you're doing the right things? That'd be
Exactly.
amazing.
And then having everybody all around you in full love and support, of you and what you're doing and you of them.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing time. It's going to be a fun 1,000 years, I'll tell you what. And then afterwards too, it's just going to be a fun life, fun
Yeah.
eternity. There you go.
Right.
All right. Well, we're at about time. So next week we're looking at. So what's our topic for next week? This is still kind of up in the air a little bit, but we're thinking about the prodigal son and going through this. So what was this? So it was rising from the ashes, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
what do you do as a sinner? how do you
Right.
how do you how do you dig yourself out of your holes, out of the hole you may have dug yourself into, or that you may have found yourself in, or that you were born into? You get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so
You are where you
basically,
are, but how do you go up from there?
yeah. So it's going to be a good week. I'm looking forward to that. I'm thinking that it'd be fun to go through and look at like individual records on people, like look at people who, just take Moses for instance. Look at his life, what he did, where he screwed up, and where he prevailed. King David. We can look at other kings. The Prince of Tyre, King of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. There's so many things that we could look at. So it'll be a fun week to get into those things. And the idea would be action items for how do you
Things that people can do in their life
yeah,
to put themselves on an upward godly trajectory
yeah.
and stay there.
One of
Can,
the things that we didn't read in Revelation that I wanted to is there's an emphasis on the things that we do. Like if you just go through and this weekend you read Revelation like 14 through 22, there's an emphasis on the way you lived your life. And we want to help people be on the right path. That's kind of the goal for next week. It's like
right.
even if you've screwed up, you know, maybe you have lied, cheated, been or just found yourself in a terrible place. What do you do? Where do you go from there? So that'll be a fun week. Well, cool. I don't have anything. Do you have anything else, Paul?
I don't. Next week, I'm looking forward to being back with you.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Well, with that, so if you come back in about an hour on Christopher and Brock's channel, he'll be live doing his show. Make sure you go say hi to him. And this is it for we won't be on until Monday, so that'll be the next time that you see us. So if you like this content and you want to see more of it, make sure you like and subscribe. We're getting a lot of new people who are coming in and seeing these videos, but not very many people that are subscribing. So if you like this content, you want to see more of it, please make sure that you subscribe and hit that like button. That really does help us. It helps show us that you're interested in this new format because this is kind of different than what we've done. So it tells us that you're interested in this format and you want to see more. Otherwise, we're likely to change it until we find something you'll like. But with that, everybody have a great weekend. Have a nice Sabbath, spending time with your family and with God. God bless you guys. Shalom, shalom.